Abbasid era, 750 CE to 1258 CE. This was a golden age for the law, but it came with major challenges that changed its course forever. The challenges from inside the world of scholars. The biggest problems came from smart scholars trying to figure out the best way to run a huge Islamic state using religious rules. The fight over methods, usul al-fiqh. The Abbasid period is famous because the four main legal schools, madhabib, were created: Hanafi, Maliki, Shafi'i, and Hanbali. This was great for learning, but it created a big problem. Everyone used different rule books to reach the law. Different ways to find their answers. All scholars agreed that the Quran and the Sunnah, the Prophet's life examples, were the main sources. But when they faced a new problem that wasn't clearly answered in those texts, they used different tools. Imam Abu Hanifa in Iraq lived in a big, busy city with many new issues. He often used his own legal reasoning or jurist preference istihsan. This meant he could sometimes drop a strict rule if it caused too much trouble for the people, choosing a fairer, easier path. Imam Mali in Medina lived in the Prophet's city. He felt the practice of the people in Medina was the best way to know the Sunnah. He also used the idea of public interest, al-masalih al-mursalah, to make a ruling that would help the community even if there wasn't a direct text about it. Imam al-Shafi'i saw the differences between the other two and decided to make a very strict, clear method. He wrote a famous book, Al-Risalah, that says scholars must only use the Quran, Sunnah, agreed upon rules, consensus, or ijma, and direct analogy, qiyas, to find a ruling. These different rules-finding methods meant that scholars and judges across the empire often had very different ideas about the law. The stop sign for new thinking, ijtihad. As the schools become more organized, scholars face a choice: keep arguing and debating, or settle down and choose a standard way. They choose the latter, which solved one problem but it created another.
Compiling the holy books. A huge effort was made to collect and check all the Prophet's saying, the Hadith. Scholars like Al-Bukhari and Muslim gathered huge collections. This was great. It gave everyone a clear, common set of facts. The end of independence. However, many later scholars decided that the great founders, like the four Imams, had already figured out all the big problems. They felt they were smart enough to do independent reasoning, ijtihad anymore, starting to copy, taqlid. This led to a major shift. Instead of finding the law themselves, scholars decided to only follow the old rulings, taqlid of their own school. This was a challenge because it made the law rigid and less able to solve brand new problems, nawazil, that came up as the world changed. It also caused school rivalry, where scholars fought to prove their school was better than others.
3. Fighting for freedom from the government. The law, based on God's word, had to constantly fight to stay free from the changing demands of the human rulers, the caliphs. The caliphs mixed rule. The caliphs, like Harun al-Rashid, often supported the scholars and gave them important jobs, like making Imam Abu Yusuf the empire's chief judge. Abu Yusuf even wrote a book on land tax Kitab al-Qaraj for the state, which shows the law was part of the government. The danger of disagreement. But the caliphs also wanted to control the law. Caliph al-Mansur once tried to force everyone to follow Imam Malik's book Al-Muwatta as the only law, but Malik refused. The biggest problem was that if a judge or scholar gave a ruling that went against the caliph's wishes, they could be jailed or even tortured. This constant threat made it hard for judges to be truly fair and independent.
4. The challenge of governing a giant world. The sheer size of the Abbasid Caliphate, stretching from North Africa to Central Asia, created massive practical problems for the law, a world of new issues. The empire contained many different cultures and people who were new to Islam. This created countless new legal questions that the early Muslims never had to worry about, such as complicated international business deals and new ways of selling land, using local custom, earth. To make the law work for everyone, the scholars had to be smart. They decided it was okay to use local custom, earth, as a source of law, as long as the custom didn't go against a clear rule in the Quran or Sunnah. This was helpful for the people, but it also meant that the law looked very different in, say, Egypt than it did in Persia. This diversity was a challenge to keeping the law uniform across the whole empire. In summary, the Abbasid era was a time of great strain. Fiqh had to manage fierce arguments among scholars about how to find the law, while also fighting to stay honest and free from political power, all while trying to apply its rules to a huge, diverse, and fast-changing world. The law solved these problems by becoming highly structured and organized, but the price was that it became less flexible and restrained to new ideas.